It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of A Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to Your Personal Bank Show. Wow. The the different things I could talk about, directions I could go are so many and varied. It's just hard to know even where to start. And like I said, those of you who have heard the show know that I do 2 shows a week, and I try to focus on the first one more on the personal bank concept, how it works, how to enhance your returns and increase the amount of money you earn, reduce taxes, create positive arbitrage, increase liquidity, all those things. And if you missed the previous show, the last one I did, it covered a lot of questions, a lot of things that come up in this past week with various potential clients. Go to yourpersonalbank.com and you can listen to any of the previously recorded shows anytime you want. They all have topics. There's over, there's probably 2 years of content there now. So if you have any questions about how this works, go to yourpersonalbank.com. Certainly that'll share with you how. And of course, you can also contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422. The second show of the week, I try to take a bigger picture, and that can encompass just about anything. I try to take a bigger picture view in terms of how, anything to do with our money, or how to earn it, keep it, pass it on to the next generation. Macroeconomics, politics, anything else can apply that'll affect our money, our economic lives. How's that? Obviously, that's not the only part of our lives that's important. You know, health is important. I shared in the last show how I was in a e-bike accident. That's an electronic bike. And I broke my wrist in 3 places. Had to have surgery with those plates and screws. I'm healing, thankfully. It's going well. Started rehab and all that good stuff. So obviously health is very important, top of mind, particularly for me right now in healing this wrist. But, our relationships, our spiritual life, those are all important parts of our lives, of course. But this show's focused on the economic side of things. And it's become recently, in the last couple of years, really, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about or think about politics, for example, too much. I'm certainly one of those. I don't really pay that close attention to politics normally in a normal situation. But we're not in normal times. We're in a situation and times where our leadership, our current leadership, and there's many that, on the liberal side of things, whatever you want to call it, really, liberal is not the right word. We have a lot of people out there that are trying to change our country to a dependency type of country. They're following Marxist principles. Socialism is under Marxism, Karl Marx ideas. Communism is also. We just have a lot of people that are aggressively, actively trying to fundamentally change our country, and this affects literally just about every part of our lives, including our economic lives. And some of the things that have happened recently that are just, frankly, mind-boggling. I talked about this last week. The vaccine mandate that the current president put out there, stating that people had to get vaccines. I don't know how they're going to enforce it. People need to stand up and fight it. I stated this, that type of action would not surprise me. It'd be normal for communist China or Russia or Cuba, North Korea, dictatorships, places like that. Certainly not in democracies. And even if there was any government entity that had the right to implement something like that, it's certainly not our federal government. Read the Constitution. It would fall on the states. I mean, the Constitution, and I know it's been trampled on so much, but you know what? Maybe it's time to step up and actually finally stand up. Our rights have been eroding for decades and decades, and it's a snowballing effect, and it's just accelerating now to the point where, we have a federal government prepared to literally force people to put a needle in their arm that they may or not want or need. I mean, they talk about following the science. There's no discussion about natural antibodies, which scientific study after scientific study shows, and we've known this This is common sense, folks. People know that a natural immunity is better and stronger than any vaccine against a virus. And that's not just true with COVID. That's true with any virus, for that matter. Our natural body's immunity antibodies are, and this, I'm not a doctor, but this is a commonly known fact. Talk to any credible medical source, and they'll tell you the same thing. So do the studies. Natural antibodies are, I've seen studies showing this up to 27 times more effective than a vaccine. And it's a known fact that many people, including myself, were exposed to and had COVID and now have the antibodies. So why do they need the vaccine? Let's talk science, right? Again, it's about fear. It's about control. It's about dividing the country, pitting people against each other. I've had long conversations recently with some folks that would be considered on the other side of the aisle from a political standpoint, trying to help them overcome their fear a little bit and also trying to help understand where they're coming from a little. But it really revolves around fear. Bill Maher talked about it recently. As he put it, quote unquote, the media, the legacy media has scared the shit out of a lot of people, and that's a fact. That's a quote. And unfortunately, I'll use an example of somebody I had a long conversation with literally a day or so ago, who I had lunch with her about a year ago. And it was we were leaving the radio station to go have lunch, talk about some marketing plans. And she had stated to me that, she was wearing a mask and all this. We were outside. We were going to a restaurant to sit outside. And I just asked her a personal question. And I said, have you been out? She looked at me. No, she hadn't been out for like a year at that point. This is about a year ago, folks. And she was very nervous about it all. And we discussed it and all that kind of thing. Finally, she calmed down, took her mask off eventually, we had a very nice lunch. And she thanked me for getting her out of the house, so to speak. And this is a person who's very intelligent, was a lawyer, for God's sake. Very, very vibrant, healthy. She told me she used to work out 6 days a week at the gym prior to COVID, all these things. And I just said, and I just asked a simple question. I said, I'm not trying to push or be difficult or anything else, but locking yourself up in your apartment like that for a year, are you really living? And is this how you want to live your life going forward? Of course, she said no, obviously. And so I talked to her just the other day. It's almost a year later, I guess. And I said, I just got to ask you a personal question. Have you been out since we had lunch? She goes, Ference, I haven't. So I went out for my birthday, but that's it. So in the last 2 years, she's literally been out to eat twice. And this is a person who used to go out on a regular basis. That's how she lived her life. And again, I reminded her, and I said, no offense. Be smart. She's had the vaccines, both shots, all of this stuff. I said, no offense, but as I talked to you before, don't allow fear to rule your life. And there's so many people out there, sadly, that's been the case. And it's like I said, the legacy media has caused a lot of this fear. There's been a lot of politicians and leaders who have pushed this fear to their benefit. To gain power. She even asked me, she goes, I just don't understand why they would do that. And I was like, Rush Limbaugh said this, and I shared this thought with her. I said, if you want to understand why something is the way it is, follow the money. And by getting people to shut themselves down, it gives them control. It gives them power. There are people in this world who thrive on that. Many of them are politicians. And more power typically means more money. So it benefits them. She goes, you're so right. So it was a very interesting conversation. I don't know if it made any difference. And I understand not everybody will listen, but I just find it sad that somebody has basically given up about 2 years of their life to fear. And I would just say you need to change who you're listening to and don't succumb to fear. But sadly, that's been the case. I think the bigger picture here that I want to really talk about, though, is, it's no secret if you've been listening to the show that I've been really, really strongly against any attack on our freedoms by anyone for that matter, but particularly our government and leaders and things like that. But I have to say, I'm not overly surprised, but I am disappointed in California's recall election results. I understand it was a long shot. I understand there's 2 to 1 Democrat and Republicans in California, and I understand that California is probably the bluest state in the country. And, California is different. And Californians, many are different. I get that. That's fine. I don't have any problem with any of those things. I guess what I really struggle to understand, but I guess maybe understand a little bit, particularly after this conversation with this person I was talking about earlier, is why so many people would want, something roughly 2/3, want to keep a governor in charge that draconian lockdowns, doesn't follow his own rules. There was a lot of anger, particularly in California. I thought that anger might have been enough to make a difference. Sadly, it wasn't. And what I saw in the exit polling even was really eye-opening, was how many of them said the number one issue was COVID. And they were asked different questions about if they thought the mandates were about right, if they should be more severe, less severe, things like that. And how there were the majority of Californians, at least, believe that the shutdowns, the mandates, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, the shutting down businesses and all the restrictions were either about right or not strong enough. And I thought to myself, wow. I mean, I guess, again, I've shared this before. I love freedom so much. Freedom is so important to me that I just, used to naturally assume that it was important to others. But clearly that's not the case. There's a different category of individual in this country today that's become much more prevalent, certainly at any other time I've ever seen in my lifetime. And that's a person who doesn't cherish freedoms. In fact, I'm thinking to myself, I know a lot of people in California. I have family in California. I have clients in California. And most of them, I've talked to them various times over the last couple of years. They say, hey, don't come here, Ference. It's a ghost town. Nothing's open. What more do they want? I mean, do they want, martial law and you're locked in your homes and, just Uber Eats brings you all your meals and you sit at home on the couch and watch TV? And to me, that would be horrible. But there's obviously a majority of people in California that's preferable. I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned in the next segment. Why this isn't so important and the challenges it may cause us very likely in the future.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And, well, really, I'm talking today we're going to talk about some big picture issues that I think have real serious ramifications for our country, for our society, for our economic lives, how it's going to affect our money. And I guess what I'm really referring to is the results of the California recall. Of course, I'm disappointed by what happened. I was hopeful, but not surprised of the results. California is a different place. I have family there. I have many clients there. I've gone and spoke in there many times. In fact, I was talking to a new client the night of the recall. And I, in fact, kind of jokingly asked him, and I said, hey, by the way, you guys have a new governor yet? And their response was, well, we hope so. And here's the thing to understand about this. The divide, we all know there's a divide in our country, in essence, of what different people want. And I firmly believe that the majority still want a land of opportunity, not a land of dependency. But California, I don't think that's the case. And what I mean by that is the exit polling from that recall election pointed out that the number one issue was COVID. No surprise. But they also asked some questions about what people's perceptions were in terms of the restrictions and shutdowns and all those things that were happening in California. If they were about, too light, about right, or too much. And the majority thought they were about right or not enough. And I mean, to me, that's absolutely mind-boggling. But I talk to people, generally speaking. I have clients all over the country. I have friends all over. The family live various places. And I talk to, like I say, clients on a regular basis. And by the way, this couple that I was talking to in California that night, particular evening, were an African-American couple. She's a social worker, and they live in Compton, California. And if anybody knows that area, I mean, that's where the race riots were in that area. With Rodney King and those kinds of things. I mean, so it's not a conservative bastion, if you know what I'm trying to say. And if I just said those things, you would naturally think that they were very democratic, very liberal, all those kinds of things. They're not. What I found is, again, I have clients from all spectrums, all walks of life, all ethnic backgrounds, you name it. The divide doesn't follow any of those parameters. The divide really falls, I believe, under, do you want opportunity? You want opportunities in your life to improve your life, economic opportunities and freedoms and things like that, like we've had throughout, the entire history of our country up till recently. Or do you want something different and be more of a dependency society? In other words, the folks that thought the shutdowns, which have shut down small businesses, it's killed many of them that'll never return, especially in California, thought that the shutdowns aren't strong enough, basically want somebody to take care of them. They prefer socialism. They would rather basically they coast, I guess is the best word. They would let somebody else take care. I mean, I guess their dream would be let the government pay them, send them stuff, send Uber Eats every day to eat food, and they can watch TV, play video games, or do whatever. I mean, I know that's a harsh statement, but it seems true. In other words, they don't want to have to do too much, and it's just kind of appealing to let someone else take care of you, and the government kind of naturally falls into that role, the nanny state, as many people call it, and much of Western Europe is that, okay? I don't know. Again, I firmly believe that's the minority in the country, but certainly not in places like California, obviously. California can be different. That's fine. I mean, that's one of the benefits of our, we're a union of states. We have very different states, have different cultures, different, all those things. And that's fine. Actually, that's how the Founding Fathers designed it and preferred it. I mean, if you think back to the original 13 colonies, they were very different. The northern colonies primarily very merchant focused, and the southern colonies were very agriculturally focused. Slavery was very common in the southern colonies and very rare in the northern colonies. That kind of stuff. Very, very significant differences, different cultures, all of that. But they came together for common good, common defense, and all that. The problem is we have a group of people who are trying to make, frankly, they're trying to turn the entire country into California. And I don't think that's what most of us want. I certainly don't. And I've heard this said, and it's so true. California keeps wanting to try to make Texas be like California. Texas doesn't want to be like California. And the thing is, Texas, though, doesn't go out and try to make California like Texas. In fact, folks that are more conservative, more freedom-loving, more opportunity-focused, frankly, just want to be left alone so they can do their thing and create and build and do something for themselves, their families, their businesses, their careers, whatever, right? The problem, the crux of the problem is the folks that prefer socialism, prefer big government, prefer these things, we're seeing this on the national stage, are trying to cram it all down our throats and make this a national thing, which is not what we want. And here's where I see the significant potential problem and a lot of uncertainty and chaos potentially. Hopefully, I'm going to say nonviolent, but it could be violent. What I'm trying to say is if California and those national leaders and various things keep pushing Texas and other red states to try to be more like California, there's going to be a point that they're just going to be fed up and say enough's enough. And there's a couple of solutions. One's violent and one's not. So either, and the two solutions, I guess we'll touch on it. Civil War. I mean, it's happened before. I don't wish that. I certainly hope that doesn't happen. But I believe we're potentially heading down a path of that direction. It could happen. People say, oh, that'll never happen in the United States. Why not? It's happened in other countries throughout history. My own family has lived through things like that, like I said, and my dad escaping from Hungary in 1956 from the Soviets. That was a revolution. That was a civil war. Okay? Those things happen. The bloodless way to do it is a convention of states and certain group of states, and that's in the Constitution, where certain groups of states say, that's it, we're done, we're going to create our own constitution, our own government, and all that. And that can be done. And that can be done legally and bloodlessly. The other solution, rather than splitting up, is California needs to learn to let Texas be Texas. You know what? If California wants to do their thing, fine. I don't have a huge problem with that. I just don't have to agree with it, and I don't have to live there, right? They need to stop foisting their views, their thoughts onto us who don't agree with them. Again, Texas doesn't try to make California be more like Texas. You don't see that very often. And but they certainly the other way around. And that's the crux of the problem. So somehow, some way, those people who are adamantly wanting to fundamentally change our country need to back off. Need to stop trying to change it, or there's going to be a point where you're going to get fed up. Stay tuned to the next segment. We're going to talk about some of the ramifications I see coming down the pike because of these issues.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And today I'm talking about some big picture issues where I see real concern and uncertainty going forward. And a lot of that's caused by the California recall election results. Again, I wasn't overly surprised by the results. I mean, it's California after all. What I was surprised about was the level of the people stating that COVID was the number one issue. Okay, I can understand that. But that when they were asked what level of mandates and shutdowns that they feel was appropriate, in other words, was California doing too much, about right, or not enough? And the majority were about right or not enough, which would be completely the opposite. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, what more do they want? I mean, taxes aren't high enough in California. There aren't enough businesses that have been shut down and gone down already. There's not enough homelessness or wildfires or cost of living. In other words, all this stuff that they're dealing with, that much of it could be improved upon, to be fair. They haven't had enough yet. That's the part that surprised me. And they actually want more. Many of them want as much or more. They haven't had enough of the shutdowns, but they want more, and most of them have been vaccinated and all these kinds of things. That's the part I don't relate to. How's that? But I guess if you're a person who, like many do, prefer socialism, who prefer just to be taken care of, and then they prefer the nanny state, and they like getting stuff. I mean, okay, I guess I get it. And, the fact that, 60% of Californians were sent a check by the state government, by Governor Newsom a week or so ago, and they're going to send him another one a week before or so, and a week after the election. I don't know my world where that comes from. That sure sounds like bribery to me. You can't see through that. And the checks were like, $600, I think, for most people. I mean, so basically you get two $600 checks. I mean, you can get bought off by that little amount. I mean, where's the level of... where's the character? Where's the motivation to do something better? I mean, you're going to be bought out by $1,200 from the state. You're going to keep the governor in because of that? Apparently a lot of people were, and they were happy with that. To me, that's, you see, I said, for me, that'd be offensive. To me, that's offensive. When the federal government started sending sending people checks, and now the state of California is doing it, I find that offensive, egregious, and a waste. And I see through what, they're trying to influence people to vote for them by giving them free stuff. I find that, offensive. I can't find a better word. But I get it. Some people like it, and they think it's cool. I just want, you know what? If you can afford to give us that money, stop taking so much. Reduce the taxes. Now, how about that for a novel thought? How about we give you less, right? But no, they're doing that because it's power. They gain power. They gain favor. They gain more money then, right? So my point, it's this divide of what people want. It's a war of ideas, right? So, again, if California wants to be California, that's fine. I really don't have a big problem with it because we're all different states. And, again, I don't have to live there. I don't have to agree with it. That's fine. I served in the military. People can disagree. I help protect that freedom. It's actually a freedom. And what really gets me, though, is, again, California and national leaders trying to make Texas and other states try to be more like California. You're always pushing that. For example, let's take the abortion issue. I know it's a very political issue, but whether side you're on this is not important as this. There's 8. I was reading. There's like 8 states in the country right now where abortion is legal, right up to like the day of birth. I find that interesting that it's legal to kill a baby in the womb, but the next day it's born, it's illegal. I find that interesting, odd, and sad. But in 8 states in the country, that's legal right now. Texas has put in one of the strongest abortion laws, probably of any of the states. And the liberal establishment and the federal government has gone nuts over it. And they're suing them and all these other kinds of stuff and going crazy. If there's 8 states that allow abortion up to the day of birth, there should be 8 states like Texas. That's balance, right? In other words, if Texas wants to do that, and the majority in Texas want to do that, let them do it. It's called states' rights, folks. And it is one of the reasons, certainly not the only one, why we had a civil war in the 1800s, right? Because the states wanted to do things that the national government didn't want them to do, and they went to a war over it. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the things they wanted to go to war over, but it was, in some respects, states' rights was part of the issue. It was. That's the history. And that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with basic civil rights, where it's going to force us to take people to shoot a needle in their arm, whether they want to or need to or not. It's that kind of stuff that really rubs me the wrong way. I'm going to talk about in the last segment why this is so important, so don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show, and today I'm really talking about the big issues that I see today that are likely going to lead to some significant uncertainty going forward. And this is going to be very important because these are the kinds of things that can affect our society, our country, individually, economically, certainly. There can be significant upheaval. And it really comes down to this California recall effort. And the results of it, again, aren't the big surprise. To me, the big surprise was really the perception people had about the shutdowns, the level of shutdowns, where the majority of Californians were polled and answered that they felt like the shutdowns were about right or not strong enough. Now, I'm not sure what else California can do short of declaring martial law and like bringing out the military, right, and making sure people stay in their homes. That's the kind of thing my dad escaped from when the Soviets brought the tanks into Budapest in 1956. Folks, we're talking communism, authoritarianism, dictatorship type stuff. And apparently there's a number of folks that are okay with that. I mean, we got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff talking to the leader of the Chinese leading general, without the duly elected president's knowledge. I mean, these are fundamental threats to our rights, to our Constitution, to our way of life, to our society. We have a bureaucrat. I'm seeing the perceptions that people are having in terms of being willing to give up their freedoms willingly, for some cases preferably, and the combination of an out-of-control, bureaucratic, overpowering federal government being some of the biggest threats we have going forward. I think the non-elected leaders, the bureaucrats, are a bigger threat than even the elected ones at this point, because in essence, basically, they're just doing what they want to do. It doesn't really matter who's in office. They don't seem to care. They're going to do what they want to do, and there's no repercussions, right? That leads to very dire scenarios, especially when you look at the current leadership, which appears at every turn is completely inept. Is probably the nicest way I can put it. I mean, look at the Afghanistan withdrawal. I think a third grader could have figured out you pull out the civilians before the military. I mean, come on. That's not complicated. I was a staff sergeant in the Army. I was a musician. I didn't know a lot about tactics, but I know that much. So you see what I'm trying to say? And it's bad enough that Biden apparently thought that was a good idea, and he's surprised people are upset with him. And the fact that he's surprised just gives you an idea of either how out of touch he really is, how much of a bubble he's in, or what is his competency level. That's really who is in charge. He himself keeps saying he'll get in trouble if he talks and his mic gets cut off and things like that. So, which means he's not in charge. He's not in control. And that just shows very weak, ineffective leadership. If he is is he the leader? I'm afraid we have a bureaucratic group that's kind of oligarchy, if you will, that's kind of running the show. That's what it sure seems like. The key point I guess I'm trying to drive at here is it's bad enough that California wants to be California. What's worse, this is the crux of the problem, is that California keeps pushing, and national leaders and folks that want more big government, more socialism, less rights to the individuals. They want to tear up the Constitution. All these different things that they want to do, keep shoving it down our throats. In other words, they won't let Texas be Texas. They want Texas to be like California. I don't see where Texas is trying to make California be more like Texas. I see California trying to make Texas be more like California. And you know what? We have a long history, at least certain parts of our country, big swaths of our country, it's still strong, of, we like our freedoms. And this divide, it's not a cultural divide. It's not a ethnic divide. It's not a rich versus poor or anything. It's a divide of ideas of, do you want opportunity? Do you want freedom? Or do you want dependency? Have you been saying this recently? Even the U.S. Park Service has it right. When you go to the national parks, I was in Yellowstone a couple months ago. They have signs that say, "Don't feed the bears because they'll become dependent." Folks, people aren't much different. Okay, look at the Indian reservations. Look what our federal government has done to that society. Look at the dependency, the multi-generational poverty and dependency and loss of hope for most of those people because, they became dependent. And that's what we're seeing in other places like California. It seems nice on the surface, but it leads to dependency and loss of hope. You see it in what I've even had people tell me, I was talking to this person I was discussing earlier in the show. What about Western Europe and Scandinavia? I know people there. I've been there. I've talked to them. I've even shared this on previous shows, which you can listen to at yourpersonalbank.com anytime you want. When they're polled and asked, you hear about, Scandinavian countries, and they're among the happiest countries in the world routinely. There's a translation issue, folks. the term it closer relates to, are you content? Are they content? Yeah, they're content. Are they happy? That's, you ask them that, and they'll tell you. Most of them are saying, but they'll also say, well, what else is there? It's all they know. They live in their small houses or small flats. They work their job. They get their free health care and education. The government takes roughly half of their income or close to it. And they're like, well, what can you do? It's just, if they don't know any different. Thankfully, we do. We have a history of that. I mean, our country started that way. Things like the Boston Tea Party, no taxation without representation, liberty or death. These were real things. Remember the Alamo, if you want to focus on Texas. They left the country twice. They left Mexico and they left the United States during the Civil War. They have a history of going it on their own. What's to say they won't end up doing that again? What is the touchstone moment that's going to, and is there going to be one, that's going to cause people en masse to rise up and say, no, enough's enough. We don't want to put up with this. I hope it's bloodless. I hope it's, like at the midterm elections, it's anybody that supported mass, let's put it this way, anybody that supported eliminating or reducing our freedoms, our civil rights, gets thrown out of office in a massive way, and there's a massive shift, okay, like a repudiation, if you will, by the majority of Americans. That will send a message to the politicians. I have confidence in the politicians in this one regard. Thomas Sowell said, I've repeated this a few times, he said, the typical politician has 3 priorities. 1, to get elected. 2, to get reelected. And 3, every other priority falls far below that. See, if the winds of change, if the majority of people say, look, enough's enough, and that happens in a significant manner, we could see a significant shift in the pendulum. And that would be great, in my opinion, of moving our country back to a society of opportunity instead of all this other stuff we've been dealing with for the last couple of years. But if that doesn't happen, like in California, and the majority say, you know what? We're okay with all this stuff. We're willing to give up our freedoms for more security, quote unquote, or whatever, or free stuff, or whatever it is, or we prefer socialism, or any of those things. Then we either go through a slow decline like Europe has been doing for decades now. Europe is not a land of entrepreneurship or innovation by any stretch. I don't think anybody could state, believes that. Or we go into where we end up being, well, in essence, 2 different countries. And like I said earlier, I was kind of laughed at and thought, I talked about this over a year ago. But it's in the, people thought I was kind of a little nutty for saying it. But folks, it's in the Constitution. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a nut job. I know the Constitution. And it's called a Convention of States. There's a legal way to do it. And if you look at any political map over the last couple of decades, the majority of states are red. What if they banded together and just takes, I don't know the exact majority. I think it's 2/3. It might be 3/4. I'm not sure. But they call for a Convention of States. It's been done twice. Once created the Articles of Confederation. The second time created our current Constitution. If that happened, we could end up with 2 or maybe even 3 countries potentially. We could see a situation where there's a West Coast is a country, East Coast is a country, and the middle is another country. We could share trade agreements and share military protection like NATO does in Europe. It's not unthinkable. But here's the thought I want to leave folks with is, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anybody knows. And what's happening is the pressure cooker is getting built, and the heat is being turned up and turned up and turned up. And there's going to be a breaking point, I believe. And it might be this vaccine mandate where people said, look, I'm not going to stick a needle in my arm just because someone told me to. I'm not going to do that. And a mass uprising of that. Or it could be something else. Like I said, a Pearl Harbor moment or a 9/11 type moment where we said enough's enough. Or a civil rights moment where Rosa Parks on the bus wouldn't give up her seat on the bus. It's those kinds of touchstone moments that really make change things, right? Whatever that moment is, it's either going to change the direction of our country back to something where it was, or what most of us recognize and would prefer, the going back to the land of opportunity, or something more chaotic and in terms of a splitting of the country, and hopefully nonviolent. But no matter how the pressure increases, the likelihood of chaos and uncertainty increases with it. And this directly affects our economic future and investments and things that involve risk. What's the solution? Folks, diversify. Create a bucket of money that has some guarantees. Eliminates taxes. Because, gosh, do you think taxes are going to be higher in the future? Most people do, and the current administration talks about raising taxes all the time. So my point is, diversification is a non-correlated asset. I'm not talking about being in various different, various different. You know the term I'm thinking. I'm at a loss in the moment. Sectors of the market, for example, that's not diversification, because a rising tide raises all ships. A lowering tide pretty much lowers all ships, or most of them. I'm talking about diversifying in a non-correlated asset, things with some guarantees, with not market risk, eliminate tax, all that kind of stuff. Have liquidity, have access, get positive arbitrage, get your money to work for you more, those kinds of things. Contact me, call me at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com for more information. I'll show you how to create some of these things to help you navigate, frankly, a really uncertain future. And I wish I could say I thought it was going to be better before it got worse, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the ultimate solution, things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. These are things my dad lived through in Europe. War-torn Europe, and then the Soviets taking over Eastern Europe, and he escaped all that. The stuff that he saw, I'm looking at increasing likelihood that I may see some of those same things that he saw here. I fervently hope not. But each day that goes by, and as the pressure continues to increase, the likelihood increases with it. Again, contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com for more information.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.